What's up, guys? Pittsburgh Weiss back again. I'm joined today by Andy,
What's up, guys?
and we're going to run through Goblin Slayer Gate Pants. We realized today, as we were talking about what we wanted to do for Deck Tech this week, that we didn't have an actual Goblin Slayer deck up. I know we had 8-Shot, right? We did 8-Shot a couple weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, my 8-shot list is up there if you're interested in checking that out.
But yeah, we didn't have a meta list
Subscribe,
go
make
up.
sure to do that. And then
Yeah.
check out my video.
Like, subscribe, hit the bell. But yeah, we didn't have a real Goblin Slayer deck tech up, and by real I mean like sort of like a more meta focused list.
This
And
is probably the big meta build
yeah,
that
the people are
you'll see a
split.
lot of.
People are split between like Priestess and Standby, right? So then this is the Priestess side. Obviously, we're doing pants, so we will hop right into it. So going into our beaters here first. These cards are in English, so obviously you guys can just read them. But we have the Goblin Slayer Chaser and the Sword Maiden Beater. So what these cards do, the Chaser, basically at the beginning of your opponent's attack phase, you can run it in front of another character. And then as long as you have 5 more cards in your hand, it's a 3k level 1. So pretty good at controlling the board. Really slows down the zero game. And helps you like just eke out even more turns at 0. It's the really good thing about Goblin Slayer is like they extend the zero game longer than any other deck. Like the only thing that comes closer is probably AOT. Since they also have the sort of like oversized like runner thing going on. But other than that, it's like Goblin Slayer's the king of like dragging out that zero game. The Sword Maiden that we have is for she swings in at 15, but she can also buff anything by an additional 15. So she can swing in herself for 3k, or buff the other Goblin Slayer to 45. And then she also has the zombie effect, which is if nothing else is rested in your front row, and she's reversed, you can pay 1 to rest her. So she can pay 1 plus if she's your thing going first. But yeah, it just helps you win over oversized lanes with the Chaser, since it only gets to 3k. Only 2 of it, because our lineup's really tight. You're going to see that going forward. It's really hard. Goblin Slayer has so many good cards. Really hard to fit everything in. But this is sort of the line we decided on, was 4-2 here. For our,
Yeah, like they both hold board at level 0 because the Sword Maiden can revive herself if she dies. But she has to be the only character on field, so that's why we're bigger on the Goblin Slayer.
And we do need Sword Mains in the deck as well for our cards we run up the top. So, important that it is a Sword Maiden. Alright, so moving on here. So we run the Priestess Brainstorm. Why the Priestess Brainstorm and not the Cowgirl? Or why not a 2-1 split like I've seen in other decks? Mostly because we need a blue fix, and the Priestess name is important. Because we're going to run the Resurrection event. Basically spoiled that already. And then the trigger check, when you reveal an event card, you can give a character 2k. That's like pretty sacky. We only really run like 5 events. But, you know, it's relevant and it's a self-rest brainstorm. So easy mode, easy pick. And then we also have the Goblin Slayer Rize. We have to run it for the Priestess early play. And it's an unreverse Rize. And it also has the alarm effect. When it's on the top of your clock, you get to check the top 2 cards of your deck, put them back in the same order before you go to attack, so it helps set your Priestess. Only 3. A lot of Priestess decks run 4 to make sure they're consistent, but 3 has felt really consistent in our testing for getting it off every single game. And there are so many good cards. Again, like we had to make space somewhere. Going down to 3 was the only real place we could make a cut. If you don't like only running this at 3, you could easily make some other cuts and sort of up it to 4. There's a bit of room to play. You're just going to give things up, and we're trying to fit everything in here, so have to make some sacrifices.
Goblin Slayer has a lot of searching power, though. You have a lot of ways to get into this card, so
Don't need to have as many.
yeah,
in
your
your
level
deck.
1 combo is really good at getting you whatever you really need into your hand. So just not really too much trouble. But I think if you needed to cut something at level 0, you could probably cut like one of the Goblin Slayer Chasers, maybe, if you wanted a 4th copy, or maybe
Yeah,
one of the
maybe.
next cards.
The Goblin Slayer is like really important to get into at level 0. But, you know,
It's
is what it
definitely
is.
like the big star in the deck, but I mean, you have to make room, maybe.
Yeah. Alright, well, moving on. So we got our trifecta of filtering cards here. We got the Moment of Peace Cowgirl. It's a Ditch a Climax Salvage, Ditch a Torch Salvage. We have the Drop Searcher from the Trial deck, which is also Scry on play, and the Cowgirl promo. I don't know how much this card is now. Probably
Yeehaw!
absurd. But it's on play, reveal top card, add ditch, and then also ditch and order, draw a card. So it's a 2-card dig. Helps you get into climaxes. That's why it's so expensive. Makes your level 1 very consistent. Filtering power is like super crazy. Double filter is really good. Only 1 drop search. It's pretty much all the deck needs. You have a bunch of other filtering tools. We like to call it going shopping, Cowgirl, because you just go get whatever you want. With the double ditch, helps you filter your hand, make sure you refresh clean, and also gets you into whatever you need. Double on 1 card. So like this combination of the the PR Cowgirl and the Moment of Peace Cowgirl, just ensures that you have like a perfectly sculpted hand all the time. It's almost automatic. And then the Drop Searcher is just here to round it out.
Important to keep in mind too that on the Drop Searcher and on the Cowgirl promo, and I guess on the other Cowgirl too, you can do the auto effects in any order on these. So whichever effect is most beneficial for you, you can fire off first. Usually with the Drop Searcher, you'll resolve the Drop Search and then scry after.
Yeah, but, unless you're just playing it.
Sometimes you might want to check the top card of your deck, and then maybe if it's something you want on top, you decide not to search.
But yeah, this is our full level 0 lineup here, so it's worth noting. We're not running the Sword Maiden Ricky. Why? I think that after a lot of playtesting, I at least have of the school of thought that when you're running the Chaser and the Sword Maiden, you're trying to elongate your 0 game to get into cards rather than accelerate into your level 1 pieces. Like, I understand the obviously the benefit of the Sword Maiden Ricky, because it can hit on a bunch of stuff, and it's definitely a good card, but in terms of Priestess's strategy, like the Priestess deck strategy, I feel like elongating the 0 game for like additional stock and additional turns is more valuable than sort of accelerating yourself into level 1. However, like, I wouldn't fault anyone for running the Sword Maiden Ricky, and you can obviously, like, if you don't like the Sword Maiden Beloved Archbishop, you can cut it for Rickies, you can make other cuts for Rickies. It's not a big deal. It's just sort of my personal preference and how I've played the deck. I don't fault anyone for running it, but I know that a lot of people are sort of charged on it on the other way, but I would implore you all to give sort of the no Ricky list a chance, and I think you'll find that it's not as necessary as you might think.
Yeah, I kind of landed on that too. Like, the deck searches so well, and like with the combination of Cowgirls and the Drop Searchers and everything you already have, and the torches you get from your level 1 combo, it just never really felt necessary. I never felt like I needed the Ricky effect. But if you are playing the Resurrection effect, the event card, you do need Sword Maidens in your deck, and
yeah, if you're in a meta where you don't need the power pump from the Sword Maiden, you can easily run Rickies in that slot.
But I think you had you were running like one of the Sword Maiden Rickies instead of the zombie one before, right?
Yeah, something like that. I was trying out a lot of different 0 lines. It didn't feel as good as like being able to control the board as consistently at 0. But yeah, moving into our level 1, I just wanted to address that. We got the Star, the Precise Battle Pack, the Goblin Slayer. The most ridiculous level 1 combo in English right now. Probably more ridiculous. Or I think equally as ridiculous as Aaron, right? Like, I think it's
more consistent, you know?
It's a different kind of insanity, right? So
it's just insanely well-rounded. Aaron's like really good, like at the maximum, right? Like, he gives you the maximum value sometimes, but this card is just super consistent all the time. He can grab his climax combo. So what it does is he grabs his torch when he attacks, and he can get it from either your deck or your waiting room. So no matter where they are, you can get them, you know.
And he sits at 6k on defense, which is really crazy for a free climax combo card. So you have a chance with like backups, which we do run in this deck, to protect these and like plus on board as well as plussing off climax combo. and the climax combos is off door trigger, gate, or whatever you want to call it. So it's like a hyper consistent climax combo that's like almost impossible to whiff. So
Yeah, there's even 2 different torches you can grab, so you can get whichever torch you want from whatever zone you want. It's literally impossible to whiff unless you forget how many are in your deck, or
if someone went to
forget if you
stock or
stock one or
clock.
something.
Yeah. But yeah, just hyper consistent climax combo. Don't need to talk about this too much. I think most people realize this is why you're playing Goblin Slayer, and that's why every single deck in this set pretty much runs this level 1, aside from like 8 shot.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, we got some other cards rounding on our level 1. A Little Kindness Witch. This is a level 1 bomb, and it also has on attack. You look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one back, ditch the other, and then trigger. So you get to choose your trigger with this card. Really powerful effect. Probably more powerful in standby. That's why you see standby decks probably run a higher count of this. We run 2 because this is a really good middle lane against Attack on Titan, which is really important in English. If you have the 2 Goblin Slayers on the side lane and this in the middle lane, the side lane errands struggle to get over the Goblin Slayers after they've been shotted by backups. So it's really important for the Attack on Titan matchup to be able to field the center when you need to, which is why we run 2. We need to make sure we see it in that matchup, which is, again, important for English. Also,
it's just a solid card too.
Yeah, it's just a good
being able
card.
to choose your triggers always nice for setting up compressed decks.
Like a really good. I don't even want to call it a shitter, but it's a really good card to just have later in the game. Make sure you trigger clean.
And with standby decks getting more prevalent too, having Suiciders in your deck's really nice. A nice way to answer their level 1s.
Agreed. And then we have the Priestess back row. Good thing we don't monetize our videos every time I put this card up. During your opponent's turn, all your other order characters get 1,000 powers. It's a global 1k on opponent's turn. And when you slam a climax, you get Awesomeness, Married Life in 2 lanes, which is plus 1,000 power to 2 other characters. This is probably the most ridiculous costless support I've seen in Weiss. This is like one of the craziest supports for the deck. Makes your Goblin Slayer
really
sit at
good.
7. Makes them swing in at 9. It's like just like increasingly stupid. Well, it makes them swing in at 8, right? Like swing in at 8, defend at 7.
It only pumps on your opponent's turn.
Well, no, the climax pump.
Oh, you have the climax.
Yeah. So they swing in with climax combo at 8, and then they defend at 7, back up to 9.
Yeah, 9k is a really significant number. Just being able to sit at 7k will already wall out a lot of level 1 on reverse combos.
Or at least tie them, right?
Or at least it will at least tie them. Usually they'll get up to 7k. But being able to back up to 9k, that's like a really tough number to clear.
And it's costless. The fact that it's costless. This is like the craziest card in the deck, I think. Like one of the craziest cards in Goblin Slayer, I think, is the
fact that it's so
Priestess
good
back
like
row.
on offense with a double Married Life, which is insane. And then just every single turn on your opponent's turn, everything gets 1,000. It's a lot of 1,000s going around.
But yeah, really good card. Moving into our other level 1 cards. So these are our backups and events. So obviously we got to run a lot of torches. We run 3 of the Mill Torch and then 1 of the Force Torch. I'll get into that in a second. We also run 2 2K backups. So the Force Torch, only 1 of it. This card is really good at like just consistently destroying your opponent's back row. Like really good against decks that crutch on their back row really hard, like Konosuba or like ReZero. Like crutch on their Brainstorm, they crutch on their Union, stuff like that. You can just remove it. You can just kill it. And you're in the mid game, so you don't have to worry about the big spooky threats yet, right? After your level 1. And because you have the deck manipulation with your torch going into your opponent's turn after you've comboed, you can probably refresh and like get off some cancels, is the like theory behind it. So if you sit at level 1 a second turn, you can really start to like grind the salt in your opponent's wound, basically, by like killing their back row after winning lanes with backup and stuff. So
how I like to think of it is with like the milling torch, mill 4 cards and pick a character from among them, put it in your hand. That's like a more consistent option to just get a card you need. But because your climax combo goes off every single time, like regardless of what your opponent does. And because the deck runs gates and a lot of other plussing tools, you tend to end up with a really big hand. So being able to go for like an aggressive 1-for-1 with the Force Torch, the one that moves one of their characters, it's sometimes nice. It lets you choose between a more defensive, milling-oriented, character-grabbing strategy with the counter torch, or you can just drag up one of their guys if they're going to leave you open spots.
I think the big thing is it ruins your opponent's sculpting, right? They have to like keep extra back row cards against Goblin Slayer when you when they're playing against it if they're a deck that really relies on their back row. Like especially Konosuba.
It's just the fact that you have the option to grab either one is just so ridiculous.
Yeah, you can just grab whatever one you need. If your opponent just has been kind of bleeding out and hasn't had a great early game, you can just grab a bunch of normal mill torches to make sure your deck state's good. But if your opponent's pretty set and you're pretty confident that you'll get an extra turn at 1 or even at 2, you grab the torch, pull up their brainstorm or whatever after backupping over a lane to 9k, pull up their brainstormer, pull up their union, kill it, and now their sculpting is ruined for the rest of the game. Really, really strong event. Pretty cool.
There's not many ways to interact with back row, especially in English, so this is definitely a big standout card for the set.
But yeah, I think that's it for these 3 cards.
Yeah, I think we should move on to some of the level 2s.
All right.
We only have a couple.
Yeah, just these 2, actually. So we got our anti-change backup. It's a ditch 2 waiting room anti-change, but it's anti-change. I don't even want to get into it. It's not great. It's bad cost, but you run it. We've talked that to death. I don't want to waste time on it. And then we also have the Always Together Priestess as a back row. Level 3 or higher cards in front of this get 2k, and then it bonds to the Trowel deck finisher Goblin Slayer, which we'll talk about later. So helps Shroud. In certain matchups, we need additional power for our Priestess early plays to make sure that they live cross turn. Standby matchups, matchups where your opponent can pump a lot of power going into level 2. You prioritize grabbing this and holding this early so that you can make sure that your priestesses have a better chance of living. And that's why we only run it at 1. The bond just is, gravy. I think we'd run this even without the bond or even a lesser effect. The 2k in front is really good.
Yeah, when you're going all in on a walling strategy, it's really important to make sure your walls actually live. That's when the deck gets crazy.
Yeah, when you get to recur it. All right, so level 3s. Obviously, the big one, Pureed Priestess. So this early play is when we have that Rize from level 0 in Clock, which, as you guys remember, top checks the top 2 cards of your deck before you go to attacks, which is important. When you play this card, you draw 2 ditch 1, so it filters, digs into the pants if you don't already have it. And then on attack, if you have the pants in your climax area, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an order character or an event, so this only whiffs on climaxes, which is really good. This card gets 1500 power, and your entire opponent's board loses 1 soul next turn. And the only way to counterplay that is to bounce this card in main phase. Any other time, and it'll still go off. Well, main phase or climax phase.
The big advantage of the Priestess, there's a lot of decks that have these, they're called soul wall effects. Where you just reduce the damage they're hitting you with next turn. But this one targets, it hits every character on their field without targeting them. So the fact that it hits all 3 of their characters instead of just 2, and the fact that it can get around other cards like there's an Armin in Attack on Titan that usually wrecks soul wall decks, but Goblin Slayer doesn't care. It's definitely the best soul wall option you could run in the game
English.
At this point.
Yeah, the fact that it's on pants as well means that you have a higher chance of recurring it. You're already draw 2 ditch 1 for every one you play, and if you already have one, you probably have a high chance of getting into another pants. And extra climaxes in your hand in Goblin Slayer aren't as bad because you also have the double ditch Cowgirl that lets you ditch a climax and a torch to salvage. Which, if one of these dies, you salvage this back, you play it again. If you have the wrong climax, get into it again. This is probably not only being the most powerful soul wall in terms of its effectiveness in the meta, since it doesn't get bodied by Attack on Titan, as Andy said, but also is probably the easiest to loop of any neg soul wall combo. I can clearly remember games where I've done this like 3 to 4 turns in a row for extended games, where my opponent just won't die to my vanilla swing, so I just have to continue playing this combo over and over and over again, and it is not hard to do.
It's definitely annoying to sit down against.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And the big thing about this, if you're talking about regionals and the general regional landscape, this card is like almost a ticket to like 5-5-0, like 4-1 at least, right? Like in the
It seems
early
like a very
stages,
powerful strategy that's very consistently implemented.
if
Not
you
only through the fact that the pants trigger will grab extra copies of itself, but the fact that the priestess is drawing cards when she enters your field too.
like the way this card loses is when your opponent techs for it, right? They have to have answers for this card, and they have to sculpt for it. So they have to not only be good enough and in a good enough state to sculpt into anti-change to force you to, at the very least, side with this card. Because you always side. You have to keep this card on the board. That's your win con, is recurring this. So not only do they have to be a good enough player to sculpt into it, they have to build their deck to answer this card and expect to see it. So the fact that those two factors together, this card is definitely like a... I don't want to be mean about it, but it's like a local stomper, like an early round stomper card. The Weiss community in general, the Weiss community that goes to tournaments, is definitely more serious-minded than most. And I feel like this has been memed to like this has been memed to such high levels that most people will be taking it for it. But still, it's a very, very powerful strategy.
You don't want to, even if you're not playing Goblin Slayer yourself, you really need to know that this is out there and have a strategy in place to deal with it, because you will get bodied by it if you are unprepared.
Yeah, you have to be aware that, you know, the second you see this climax or this card enter your opponent's grave or clock, you have to be preparing for it. So, I just wanted to note that before we moved on, because I know a lot of people like Priestess is a pretty polarizing card. So I just wanted to note on that. Moving into our other level 3s. So this little package here, we got the Burdened by Fate Goblin Slayer. It's an early play. If you have 4 or more other order characters on your turn, gets 500 power for each of your other order characters, and also has on play ditch any card from your hand and then search your deck for an event card. The event card that we will most likely search with this is Resurrection, which is a 3/4 event. And then on play, you must choose a Sword Maiden and Priestess in your name, put them in your grave, and then choose up to 5 cards in your clock and put them into the waiting room, and then put this card in your memory. So it is a heal 5. Pay 4, ditch 2, heal 5. Pretty good.
Your opponent's already going to be struggling to hit you for damage, because if you get your Priestess well set up, and then if they do manage to stick a few damage on you at level 3, you can just heal it off with this card.
Yeah, so this package is mainly insurance, right? It's to make sure that we have a chance to play the game, even if we get smacked early.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the deck search, since it's only a 1-of, as long as you're cognizant of when this card is going to stock, is very consistent to pull it out, as opposed to having the 0 that bonds to this card. It's a clock bond to it when the Resurrection is engraved. Getting it from deck has always felt more consistent, for me at least in my testing. And the early play is pretty good too. Swings in an 11-5. Helps good, decent enough third lane if you have the stock.
You really need to, I think, like, you gotta assess how the game's going early on. If you're eating shit early on, you definitely want to go for the card. But if you're like really far ahead, you can probably not worry as much about getting it.
Prioritize your priestesses.
The games where you need it, you definitely want to be looking for it.
And you can run one of it, as we're normally, like, I think on Pittsburgh Weiss Schwartz, I think we're, at this point, people probably know, I hate 1-ofs of events, because you can't get them, and it's pretty inconsistent, but you have a way to tutor here. And your Goblin Slayer, you have ways to get into your 1-ofs. More than enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
Just remember, you need to have a Sword Maiden and a Priestess on your field to use this card.
Well, not in your field, in your hand.
Oh, in your hand.
Yeah, in your hand. But still, you do have to have them. It's steeper than you think, so the 1/0 Sword Maiden has value throughout the game, so it's not a bad card to hold. Holding the extra Priestess usually isn't an issue, so it's more about making sure you have the Sword Maiden. Speaking of Sword Maiden, I'll talk about the card on the right first. Passionate Yearning Sword Maiden, so it's an on-play heal. All your other order characters get 1500 power, and then you can rest this card to look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put them on the top of your deck in any order. So it lets you top check rearrange. This is good for making sure that you can recur your Priestess combo after your clock condition is gone from your early play, so going into level 3. And it's also a healer. Healing's important. We have the big heal event, but if we just need a normal healer, that's why this is here. And also, more importantly, the Masked Figure's Name Goblin Slayer. So this is from the trial deck. During this card's battle, your opponent can't play backups, so they can still play events. That's important. And then on reverse, you can pay 3 and then deal 2. So doesn't really have to worry about power backups as much, right? That you're mostly worried about like seizure. It loses the seizure, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one matchup though. I guess you could consider maybe one of the weaknesses of the Priestess deck would be that you don't have like a dedicated finisher. You don't have like the other decks will run like burn combos at the top end maybe, and this kind of fills that gap, allowing you to run this on reverse burn and be able to aggressively push for games when you need to, as opposed to just always tanking up on defense.
And we do have the bond to it as well, so we have more ways to get into it. You usually hold on to one of these when you see it to push for game when you see the opening. But other than that, it's you're mostly looking to wall out your opponent for game and win by attrition as opposed to pushing. 2 good cards for rounding out our level 3 lineup, though.
Yeah, the fact that it's searchable and the fact that they can't back up during it means you're going to get the reverse most likely.
Yeah. So looking at the deck list overall, more 1-ofs than in most of our decks on this channel. And that's because, as we said, with the combination of Torch, as well as all of our filtering tools, we have ways to get into what we need at any point. That's one of the big reasons why Goblin Slayer is such a good and consistent deck. So that facilitates a lot more 1-ofs and a lot more space in the list. You can see we're a lot more spread out than we typically are. However, you can see, obviously, it makes our 4-ofs stand out even more. Our level 0 Goblin Slayer, our level 1 Goblin Slayer, and our level 3 Priestess are our only 4-ofs in the deck, and that's because they are the most important cards.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, any other thoughts on the deck, Andy? We've seen it all laid out.
I think it's a really consistent build. There's definitely some ratios you can tweak to your preference, like the number of cowgirls you want to run, like the filtering cowgirls at level 0, the box topper, as well as the picnic basket one. You can kind of tweak those numbers however you like. And we said earlier with the Rize, the clock condition for the Priestess wall, if you don't feel like you're hitting it enough, there's a lot of spaces where you could cut a card and add another copy of that in if you want to. It's a perfectly fine card to run on its own at a 4-of. We just felt like we were able to hit it consistently enough that we could make room for something else.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for Goblin Slayer.
Very, very strong deck, and like, you know, we've talked a lot before, Carmen, about how like Bang Dream is the budget deck, but that's just not true anymore. Someone pointed out in the comments on one of our videos.
Yeah, I believe it
Bang
was
Dream's
Connor.
like $400 or $500 now for a deck. Goblin Slayer is actually really, really cheap.
Outside of the Goblin Slayer level 3,
outside
I think.
of like the level 1 combo, the
yeah.
deck is absurdly cheap because it was open to death.
Yeah, it was opened a lot. So
There are a lot of people fishing for SPs, so there's a lot of copies of the base rarity stuff out there. So if you want a powerful deck to take to like a regionals or a higher level tournament, this is probably the cheapest top tier option you could go for.
I'm not exactly sure on the numbers, but yeah, I think it's up there as like one of the cheaper decks you could play. I always forget how expensive Yukinas have gotten since the set is out of print. But you're going to see a lot of this deck, whether you choose to play it or not. So make sure you're prepared. It's a very polarizing deck. It's a polarizing matchup no matter what. So just make sure you are at least familiar with it, even if you're not going to play it.
Good advice.
So lastly, put this slide on all of our videos when I remember. A lot of people find Weiss Schwartz resources on YouTube and don't know where to go otherwise, so we just want to make sure people know. We got the two big Discords, the Card Games Discord and the competitive Weiss Schwartz Discord. The first is mainly just like, it's got a discussion for a lot of different card games, a lot of people hanging out in voice chat, playing games on TTS, sorts of stuff like that. A little bit more laid back. The competitive Weiss Schwartz Discord is run by Burn One. They have more focused discussion. They both also have buy-sell trade stuff, but if you're looking for mostly buy-sell trade, you want to check out the Facebook groups, the global community and the NA community. Both of those you can look to buy cards from other players, usually really good prices, and also if you want to sell your cards too. Global community also has cards of the day with translations for JP. So if you're interested in new cards, you can always check out there. Those guys are really good. They have translations out real quick for us. Make sure we can check out all that new stuff. We also have all our Twitters down here for all our recurring cast. Andy, Sayaka's Wish, and then myself, at Beanwolf. You can give a follow. I tweet about Weiss a good bit. I don't know about Andy, but
we'll get there.
But yeah, I think that's it. By the time
thanks for watching, guys.
When this goes up, I think Bang Dream.
Like and subscribe if you haven't.
Bang Dream's probably up by the time this goes up. Yeah, I think it should be up in its entirety.
Yeah, this will be.
But yeah, we'll have Bang Dream up.
So, yeah.
We need to do slime. Need to hunt down our guests for that. Make sure we can get them in on it.
He's an elusive one.
Yeah. But yeah, we want to do a slime pre-review, and then I guess after that is Adventure Time, right? We don't have anything else announced. I guess Memory Snow. We could get the jump on Memory Snow. That was recently announced. So upcoming content. We also kind of want to do, I guess, more when the tournament season starts back up. We want to do sort of like a Spark Notes for every set about what like cards you need to worry about, general set like priorities, what you need to know going into every matchup.
A little meta snapshot.
Yeah, sort of like a I guess it would be really similar to like a Hearthstone meta snapshot or something like that as to what you need to prepare for. So that's something we want to do. But you know, we're gonna focus more on our set review stuff since all of the tournaments are in flux at current time. But yeah, I think that's it.
Yep.
All right. Pittsburgh Weiss Schwartz signing off. We'll see you guys in the next one.